Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Annalisa and this is my Monsterathon wrap-up. I think I've read like 15 books and 12 manga this month, but I'm not totally sure. I'm going to run through the prompts and what I ended up using for them because it did not stick to the TBR very well. So for Ma Swamp, I read Rose Daughter, which is to read something with a cover you really like, and I really like this cover. This is one of the ones that I switched out, but I was able to get the audiobook for it, and I was in an audiobook mood, so it was really handy. For Whispering Woods, to read an Underhyped book, I read Dragon Diary. For Babadook's Lair, which is to read LGBTQIAP+ books, I read Elatsoe, which has Ace Rep. For Hydra's Hangout, I read Ancient Mage's Bride, which I've just dropped all over the floor along with a bunch of other books. They're very cool, and I didn't realize that this would count for that prompt, which is to have mythology in your books until Cecilia, I think, pointed it out. And then I was like, I'm reading a bunch of these anyway because they're manga and they're really easy to read for a high page count. And so I decided to slot these in where I was going to read Pandora, but I just didn't feel like reading Pandora. So for Under the Bed, I read Pet, which I already told you about. For Friendly Neighbors, which is to read a recommendation, which I got from my cats picking one, I read Slay. For Secret Crypt, I read Smoke Bitten, which I already told you about. Moment of Peace, Devil's Daughter. Area 51, A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. Rearview Mirror, Tainted Moonlight. The Upside, Goose Girl. And The Bunker, Kiss Quotient. I ended up terrifying 11,214 villagers, which is the second most from the Beast team. The Beast team won, by the way. Go us. But let me tell you what I've been reading the last week and a half or so. So, Slay. I actually ended up reading the audiobook of this as well, even though I had this, which I usually really prefer physical books, but I was reading a lot of physical books at the same time and needed an audiobook, so I ought to pick something that was already on my TBR. So I listened to it, and it actually has a like 5-person cast, I think, and so not each character, but every perspective character, when their chapter is going, we get to hear a different voice. So that was really cool. We mainly focus on the one perspective of the main character, but there are a few others sprinkled in that give us like other information and how other people are reacting to the situations, which I found to be really helpful and interesting. So if you're not aware, this is about a 17-year-old black girl who has invented a video game and has been running it for a few years, which as a concept is really cool, but also kind of difficult to believe. Not because she's young and she's not smart enough. I totally believe she's smart enough. It's just the human hours that it takes to make a video game when she has apparently only had one person helping her for free. It's just like, that's so much time that I can't believe she would have had when she was also doing school. But it's a very cool concept, and we got to see a lot of her and other people playing the game. It is an MMORPG, and there is a lot of world building that she has done, and it's one where you play cards to do attacks and actions, but they have also fully animated version, like you can see it from every angle version of what all the cards do, which again would take so many hours to do, but it's very, very cool, and it really made my little MMORPG lover very happy. The conflict comes from it being a video game that is only for black people, and the way that they make that actually work is that it is word of mouth only, so you only tell your black friends about it and you give them this password, and then they can give it to other people, but everybody knows that it is to be a safe place for black people, so they only share it with other black people, kind of like any underground thing where, you know, you don't announce it out to everybody, you like just tell specific people you trust. And thus far it has worked really well. They have a really good safe place, and it's talked about a lot in this book how a lot of online gaming is not safe for black people. People use a lot of slurs and generally treat anyone they can tell is a black player really badly. So they really needed this place, and there's also a lot of celebration of black culture, be it American black culture or African black culture or black people in France, all sorts of places, and that was really cool to see. But some people end up getting into a deadly argument over in-game currency, and that brings a lot of media attention, along with a lot of people talking about how this is, they didn't even call it reverse racism, they just called it racism, which of course now I've seen a lot of discourse online about how reverse racism is not a thing because you're not being oppressed, you have plenty of places to be. And so this kind of didn't say that outright, it just kind of hinted at it. Like, there's a lot of discussion of people who thought it was racist, but I didn't feel like the girl who was making it really put her foot down about this is why it's not racist. But that kind of makes sense, she's just 17. Her older sister is much more like, I know all the arguments, this is why this is this way. And so we got to see a look at that, but it didn't like lay things out in stone the way I expected it to, from how internet discourse kind of lays it all out. This is what you have to believe. So that was interesting. And it also addresses sexism really well, and deals with a verbally abusive, controlling relationships, so kind of a trigger warning for that, but I think it's handled really well. Then I read The Dragon Diary, which is the second in this series up here, which is the Dragonology Chronicles, which is about Dr. Ernest Drake, who's the fictional author of this book right here, Dragonology, which I started reading when I was probably 8 and have loved ever since. And we get to explore some of the dragons featured in that book in this one, because our two main characters, a boy and a girl, Daniel and Beatrice, who are siblings, with the girl being the older one for once, which is really cool. And we get to go around the world saving people. And I really like how this book handles the middle grade parent problem, where usually middle grade parents are either dead or terrible, same with YA parents, because how else would these children get into death-defying circumstances? In this case, just as a nature of their job, the parents have a very dangerous job, which is studying dragons, and so sometimes they get into trouble that they can't get out of and their kids have to save them. Kind of along the lines of Spy Kids. They weren't bad parents, they just got in trouble and like nobody was going to save them if their kids didn't do it. I also really like the interactions between the sibling main characters. They are really cool, and I really like the way that this male author writes female characters. He did a good job, in my opinion. Then I read several more of these. I read a bunch of them while I was camping, and then I read some in the in-between weeks, and then I read these last 3 in the last week and really enjoyed them. We are now getting to study magic not just between this master and apprentice, but we are studying at a college, and so we are getting lots more information about the world building and how things work, and also making a lot of new friends, which I really enjoy. Then there's these books, which I had up through, which I had this much of it, this much of it in a like 1-volume form, once again from when I was a kid, and I read it so many times. It was falling apart so bad. It was used when I got it, but it was really falling apart by the time I was done with it, and so I practically have everything up to that point memorized, and so it was really nostalgic to reread that part, and it was also really nice to get to go on with the story and find out more, because I had only ever read the first volume. Basically, it's about these 5 girls who are tweens, 13 and 14, who are chosen ones, basically, to protect the veil, which is a barrier between the human world and the magical world, basically, that has a lot of monsters, but also apparently a lot of nice people. And so we gotta figure out how to reconcile these two worlds and take care of people here. But as we go on past volume 1, we actually learn more about the magical world and the people who live there, and we want to take care of them too. I really like the interactions between the characters. There is a lot of immaturity, but also a lot of loyalty to each other and taking care of each other and taking care of what's important when the chips are down. Plus, each character, we get to look into their family life, and so we get to see lots of different ways that individual families interact. Then there's Rose Daughter, which is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, which I love, by Robin McKinley, which I have read one of her other Beauty and the Beast retellings, which was much more sticking very close to the original tale. But this one diverts a bit, and something that was really interesting is that kind of, I guess, jumping off the idea that the main character is actually named Beauty, Other people are also named after their characteristics, like one of her sisters is named Jewel Tongue, her other sister is named Lionheart, and I really love the sisters and the characterization of them. That was really interesting. But also, like, lots of other people in the villages and they interacted with were named after their professions or what they did. Like, I think the daughter of the local squire was named Fancy Frock or something, and she liked to wear pretty dresses. And I can't remember any of them, but they were all really clever but also kind of silly. And so I felt like it added to that magical fairy tale vibe of it's a story more than a real life thing. And I think that the audiobook really added to that. For one, it had some sound effects, but also this feels like a sort of story you should listen to around the fireplace rather than to be read out of a book. Also, Lionheart is the strong, brave girl who likes to work with horses and also like builds things herself. She totally fixes up the poor rundown cottage that they have to move into after their father's business gets ruined. And I really enjoy a physically strong lady in a story. In this story, the time spent with the beast was very short, but once again, because it was that sort of fairy tale oral history sort of vibe, it didn't bother me too much, but it wasn't, you know, as precious and wonderful as really long-term Beauty and the Beast stories. But I really, really liked the ending and how that was done. So if you know the ending to this story, I think that was totally awesome. And in general, there was a lot of lore surrounding the curse, which I didn't totally get, and I might have gotten better if I was reading it physically, because it was pretty complicated. It would have been nice to maybe reread part of it, but it didn't wreck my experience. It was just I might have gotten more out of it. And I felt like it was a little more complicated than it needed to be based on how complicated the rest of the story was. Then we have Elatsoe, Dear Precious Elatsoe. I know I said it wrong earlier in the video, but there is a written out how to say it in the book, so I learned that while I was reading it. It's Elatsoe. But Elatsoe, who is referred to as Ellie for most of the book, is a ghost raiser. She is from the Lipan and Apache tribes. So right away we get introduced to Ellie's ghost dog, who she raised from her pet who died, and that's really cool. We get to see her playing fetch with him and how it's cool because he's invisible, so he can scare people by picking things up, and then like it seems like they're floating, but he's just holding them. And things get darker when her cousin from her mother's side dies, and his spirit comes to visit her as he is dying to tell her that he has been murdered, and he has been murdered by a specific person that he knows the name of, and he wants her to protect his family from this guy because he is worried this guy will go after his family now that he has killed him. And so fortunately, this is a world that totally believes in magic, and her family specifically believes in her specific kind of magic, so her dad and her mom go along with this. Yeah, we better protect this family and actually listen to what she says. So I really like how that was handled too. The parents are actually supportive in this YA novel. This girl is 17, by the way, although the prose really feels MG to me, so that's interesting. If you like MG better than YA, I think you would really like this. So the parents are really supportive in this one, and I think that's really cool. It's just, it's one of those times where the kid has a magical power that the parents don't, and that's why they get into more trouble, because the parents can't like help them with this magic thing that they don't have power over. There was quite a creepy atmosphere, and there was a lot of like conspiracy going on, and so that was very creepy to me. It wasn't like jump scary or body horror, but it was just very creepy. So if you're looking for a creepy atmospheric sort of story, I would recommend this one. Also, the ace rep is very casual. I don't think she referred to herself as a romantic, just asexual. And her friends were really nice about it. They were a little bit awkward about it. It was just in their efforts to be non-ace exclusionary, making sure that she felt included, and not like they were just pretending she was straight. So that was really nice. I gotta go. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!